FTP, or functional threshold power, is a pretty important metric within cycling. Essentially, a higher FTP means that you can hold a higher power for longer, therefore making you faster. And that's important for all aspects of cycling, whether you're doing hill climbs, time trials, triathlons, or simply trying to keep up on your weekly club ride. So, how do you improve your FTP? Well, that's why I'm here. I'm going to share some of the tips that I've found to help me over the years. So, my go-to when trying to improve my FTP, and the same for many pro cyclists and triathletes out there, has to be sweet spot intervals. Now, sweet spot is an intensity that sits just below your threshold or FTP, around 88 to 94% of your FTP to be exact. This means that you can sustain long periods of time at this intensity, which in turn helps to boost your fitness and FTP, and is why it's often regarded as one of the best bang for your buck types of workouts. Now, in terms of duration, you're looking at efforts in excess of around 10 to 15 minutes, with some very well-trained athletes doing multiple hours. Now, to be clear, this is still obviously a very hard effort, but not so tough that you'll be exhausted for days on end. You should be able to do sweet spot intervals, recover quickly, adapt, and repeat, or throw in other workouts in the same week. Talking of which, there are, of course, threshold intervals. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're wanting to improve your threshold or FTP, you're going to need to work at that intensity. And obviously, this is a tougher effort. Your FTP is theoretically the maximum power that you can sustain for roughly 60 minutes, give or take. So you're going to want to do shorter intervals, and you're probably not going to be able to repeat these day in, day out, or at least we wouldn't advise you to. So we'd suggest you start with reps of around 3 minutes and then increase the length of them minute by minute with time, and maybe even play around with reducing the recovery time too. And another workout for improving your FTP is microburst intervals. Now, as the name suggests, these are very short bursts of high power, almost like a sprint, and literally 10 to 20 seconds at most. Now, the idea of these short bursts of high power is for neuromuscular stimulation and muscle recruitment, almost like you're trying to unlock your power potential, or at least that's how I like to think of it. Now, despite these obviously being high intensity efforts, due to the length of them, they're not overly fatiguing or exhausting, and that means that you can repeat them regularly and put them in around other workouts. And that leads me nicely on to recovery and consistency. If you want to improve your FTP, you need to train consistently. Now, I'd recommend setting yourself and planning a training plan, or following an existing training plan, or seeking the advice from a coach. Hitting an epic week of training, which, let's face it, we've all done before, and then suffering for the subsequent weeks is not the answer. That will not improve your FTP. And on that note, be patient. You're not going to improve your FTP overnight. Your FTP improvements happen over the course of weeks and months of hard training. In fact, a 20-watt improvement over the course of 3 months would be amazing. Obviously, all of this is going to require some hard effort, so make sure that you do factor in some good recovery between those hard workouts, and you're not constantly doing back-to-back hard workouts. With that, also do pay attention to the signs of overtraining, such as increased resting heart rate, struggling to get your heart rate up during workouts, or a plateau in performance or decline in performance, and even poor sleep. If you spot any of these, then back off immediately and seek some professional advice. Now, to do these focused and quality workouts, you of course need to consider where you're doing them too. If you're constantly having to stop or slow down due to where you're riding, that's going to affect the quality of your workouts and the potential benefits. Now, ideally, you want to find somewhere with relatively smooth roads where there's little disruption. If that means that you have to do it in hills, then so be it. Of course, the other option is to head indoors too. I've got to be honest, pretty much my go-to these days due to time efficiency and the quality of the workouts. And with functions like erg mode and Zwift, it really allows you to lock into those workouts and simply focus on laying that power down undisrupted and having fun too. Now, admittedly, I have kind of scooted over the power element of functional threshold power here, but in my opinion, my eyes, power is by far the best metric for measuring your effort while cycling. I do appreciate though, power meters aren't a cheap bit of kit, but if you are debating as to whether you should get one or not, I can't recommend them highly enough. I mean, they're so responsive. They respond immediately to the effort you're putting out. And there is a reason, obviously, why so many pros use power meters. Of course, if you're new to triathlon or cycling or simply don't want them, you can just use heart rate. And there are plenty of calculators out there. You can find them online. They calculate your zones based on your heart rate and also power. And my final tip is to cut the rubbish. If you're really focused on trying to improve your FTP, then do workouts specific to that. Things like long endurance rides are fantastic for improving your general cycling fitness, but they can leave you with a lot of residual fatigue in your legs that can have a knock-on effect in those quality workouts. And that's not to say cut them all together, but just be mindful of how you're doing them, when you're doing them, in around those quality workouts. You could, of course, phase your training, cut them out for a period of time whilst you focus on those quality workouts, and then bring them back in at a later point. Now, that is how to improve your FTP. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. Maybe set yourself a target, set yourself an FTP that's realistic, you can aim for. Let us know what that is in the comment section down below and get stuck into it. Give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe down below.